Hello and welcome. Oscar winner Francis Ford Coppola, in my opinion, is one of the greatest movie makers in film history as a screenwriter, director and producer. So there's no surprise that he's also one of the movie industry's most decorated talents. He's won 5 Academy Awards, 6 Golden Globe Awards, 2 Palmes d'Or and a British BAFTA Award, plus numerous other industry and festival gongs. As a reminder, just some of his films include the Godfather movies, The Cotton Club, American Graffiti, The Conversation, Peggy Sue Got Married, The Rainmaker, Patton, The Outsiders and Bram Stoker's Dracula. But back in 1976, he began what became a massive physical, logistical and emotionally challenging project, the Vietnam War film Apocalypse Now. Many months before completing the film's shooting in the Philippines, stories of typhoons and on-set disasters, major health issues for its stars, and speculation about Marlon Brando's involvement had become grist for a growing and controversial rumour mill. Eventually, Apocalypse Now had its first major public screening in competition at the 1979 Cannes Film Festival. To say it stunned the almost 2,000 film journalists in the cinema would be a mild understatement. What follows is my recording the post-screening press conference featuring Francis with stars Robert Duvall and Denis Hopper answering questions about how he handled Brando, his thoughts about the Vietnam War and experiments with shooting the film's ending.
Francis Coppola is now walking in. Francis, will you introduce the stars?
This is Larry Fishburne, who played the part of Mr. Clean. Sam Bottoms, who is Lance. Albert Hall, who is the chief. We have, coming in, we have Fred Forrest, who played the chef over there with the mustache. Robert Duvall, Colonel Kilgore. Denis Hopper as that guy. Okay, where's my cameras, man? Where's the hell?
Mr. Coppola, may I ask, is this the final cut that we saw last night? And if it is, do you have a plans for a sequel with the remaining film?
Yeah, of course. This is the movie's opening in a few days, and this is the first time that the film can be said to be the finished film. And there isn't, the amount of footage shot doesn't have to do with other sequences or scenes that would make it possible to make a longer film. It just was enormous amounts of coverage, say, of the helicopter battle or of other sequences which were very difficult to shoot, and so we shot a lot of footage. So there would never, be any other kind of use of that footage.
Mr. Coppola, I'm Nancy Anderson, Coppola News Service, and I know Martin Sheen flew back from the final countdown to have a conference with you a few weeks ago, at least so he said. Did he request some changes in the film at that time? Did you change the cut? And if so, what changes did you make?
No, Marty came back to record the narration, the final narration that you heard. That narration had never appeared in any of the earlier cuts.
I'd been a soldier since I was 19, and I still haven't learned how to wait for it. I wanted a mission for my sins. They gave me one. Nobody'd ever gone on a mission like it before. And when it was over, I'd never want another one.
And any changes that were made after the Cannes preview, and they were each step along the way as the film grew to what it was as a finished film, there were a series of changes made.
Could you elaborate on the changes you made after Cannes?
There are 20 some odd elaborate changes. It would be hard to do that. I mean, I would just sit here for half an hour.
James Joyce, I think, made a comment about progress, work in progress. and I believe that Mr. Coppola, the cop-out artist, this guy, yeah. Well, he did it right on and said that it was a work in progress. And I didn't see the Con version, but I'll tell you one thing. I loved what I saw last night.
I was wondering, there's been a lot written about and discussed about the various endings that were considered to this film. I was wondering if you could debate a little bit for us aloud your thinking on the ending of the film. What were the options that you saw, and how did you come to the conclusion that you did?
A complicated piece of work, an original piece of work that is attempting to make a film, unlike a genre film, struggles on its way to completion. Not just the ending, but the whole movie. And obviously, the ending is the most important part of any film. I kept experimenting with the ending because I knew what I wanted the film to feel like at the end, but my previews indicated that the audience was not feeling that. So it was, in my opinion, a design problem. I read how I over-previewed this. I previewed it one night in Minnesota, one night in a slightly different version the next morning in Atlanta, one night in LA, and one day at Cannes. And those were the previews. On the basis of the audience reactions and our own kind of evaluation of how an audience reacted, we arrived at the final version, which is now to be shown and seen and reviewed. The reason, in terms of the ending, I had hoped to take an audience through an emotional experience, and then at the end, having had them experience or face certain things, give them some degree of relief and relaxation at the end. And this is what I feel this version does.
Mr. Coppola, would you please tell us something about how your own views on the subject of the Vietnam War may have changed in the process of making this film, in the process of making the film, specifically since you started out with a John Milius screenplay. I gather there were some differences of thinking, and it would be interesting to know some of that went into the film.
The only difference is that the original screenplay basically did not take the subject matter into a realm that was of interest to me. And starting with that early screenplay, for example, characters starting with that early screenplay, it was a basic piece of source material that, along with other source material and my own just feelings about what I wanted to express, it evolved to what it is. Really, that's all.
Well, Mr. Coppola, on that line, when you realized that your film would not be the only one made about Vietnam, can we assume that there were considerable pressures on your creative process?
No, I don't think so at all. I didn't imagine that any films that I heard were being made could at all be like the film that I was making, and they weren't.
For the record, how much did the film cost?
$31 million.
$68 million, most expensive film ever made.
How much
Well, none of it. And all of it. It's as with so many things, it's a bank loan. I am the guarantor of the bank loan, but it's not like I had $31 million to write a check on.
Mr. Coppola, what does narration by Michael Herr mean?
It means that at the time that we began to consider to write a narration for the movie, Michael Herr came in and worked with myself and the editors, and substantially, although in collaboration with the whole group that was making the film, wrote that narration.
So that narration is the interior monologue of Martin Sheen.
But, by the time it was done, everyone had his hand in it, even as was the film made.
Mr. Coppola, I'm not clear on the end. Could you tell us what point of view you want the audience to take away from the end?
That's the end of my movie, guys. Whatever you took away is what you were supposed to take away.
Yeah, Mr. Coppola, in Conrad's novel, Sheen's character returns to talk to Kurtz's fiancée. And since that scene is an integral part of the book, was it ever part of the script at any time, or was it in fact filmed?
It was never filmed, and the film was never meant to be an adaptation of Heart of Darkness. It was Heart of Darkness is a classic in our culture, and I made use of it as, one would respectfully make use of a classic, but we never attempted to make Heart of Darkness. The premise of the film is so different than Heart of Darkness that we, that would have been another movie adapting Heart of Darkness to Vietnam, and we never thought we were doing that.
Mr. Coppola, the black and white credit book that we were given indicated that Marty Sheen had suffered from heat exhaustion, where it had been reported that he had had a heart attack. Which is the case, and how did that affect the demands of his role or the actual filming from that point?
Well, Marty became very, very ill during the shooting, and we lost his collaboration with him for about 6-7 weeks, and we waited to be certain that we would get him back. As for what the nature of his illness was, like so many things, these personal things that are kind of put on paper really affect people's lives, and I don't feel it's in my place to say what his illness was.
Mr. Coppola, the film is very much a film about moral ambiguity, and I was wondering if you had given any thought to the moral ambiguity of, for example, moving a primitive tribe into the middle of a 20th century movie set, or blowing up all those thousands of gallons of gasoline in a time of severe energy crunch, or using helicopters for a film that were needed for a real war, although I assume you didn't actually have them when they were being used.
Well, from the point of view of putting helicopters to other use, I figure I saved the lives of several Muslim insurrectionists, so I feel okay about that. As for the gasoline crisis, we didn't really think about it. I guess 3 years ago, whenever we did that, there was no gasoline crisis. And as for the Ifugao people, that was one of the highlights of the movie. We really got to know and like them very much, and they got to know and like us. I think my greatest supporters are up in Banawi, wondering, they wanted, Sam, they're sure that Apocalypse has been banned because...
Well, yeah, when I returned in
you just saw them.
January and February this year, they say, "Where's Francis? How is he? We're so worried about him. We've heard so much bad press about Francis. We've heard his movie has been banned from the government."
The people in Banawi were very worried about us, that they read so much bad press and wondered, had the movie been banned and what was going on.
Over their concern, they've offered to build you a house in Banawi, Francis, in return at any time.
They've offered to build me a house in Banawi at any time, and I may take them up on it.
Can you see any parallels between the Brando segment of the film and what happened in Guyana?
God, when you're working on films, you are always struck by what the material you've been working with seems to reflect. I mean, I'm always feeling that. We were working on The Rain People, and all of a sudden people started to be talking about something known as women's liberation. We said, my God, we're ahead of our time. And on The Conversation, we were making it, and there was the Watergate break-in. And with Apocalypse, I guess if you're dealing with films about the themes of the day, it is impossible not to have these coincidences.
Mr. Coppola, why did you not detail the end of the film with the buffalo and the ritual? We had heard about how, they pamper it for 3 or 4 days. There was obviously a similarity between Brando and the buffalo as you detailed it, but we don't really learn about that, the animal they sacrifice. Did you originally have that in the film?
in shooting these people, the Ifugao, we did shoot material on a lot of their rituals, and we did have some footage in which Dennis tells about the ritual. And just in the final cut, we felt that the animal stood very clearly as a figure of sacrifice, and that would not fit with the balance of the ending.
Are you an assassin? I'm a soldier. You're an errand boy, sent by grocery clerks to collect the bill.
Okay, can I answer like one more question and then kind of open it up? I feel dumb here. I'm doing all the talking. Dennis wants to talk, and he's got a lot to say.
I got so much to say.
All right, how's the best to do that? Should I answer like a couple more questions, then we can open?
Mr. Coppola?
Yeah. Shut up.
There was a report that your wife is making a documentary film about the movie making.
He's not married.
Is that film going to be... Is that film going to be released?
She shot a lot of documentary material while we're making the film, and she's editing it now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Was there ever a point during the filming when you had a tremor of fear that you were never going to finish it?
Oh, many times. Many times. For many different reasons. It was always, there was, of course.
Try 680 hours or so. How long it takes you.
Do you still hold to your quote that the American press is the most lying, decadent form of press in the country? And if you do, how can you square that with soirees like this today?
Look, when I was making the picture, I felt that the press took a lot of unfair and unjustified shots at me. And in Cannes, maybe I took an unfair and unjustified shot at the press, so I'd like to be even.
With all you went through to make this film, and with all the years and all the information that has come down through the press as to how long it took you to make this film, the real journey you took in making it, is this the picture you set out to make? Do you feel, or is this the picture that you wanted to make?
That's like saying, is that the journey you wanted to take?
How do you feel about that journey now? That's true.
My sincere opinion is that the picture is much more beautiful than I ever could have imagined.
Me too. And I like him even.
And I've been around the movie business a long time.
Yeah, right.
I have two questions, if I may. Who actually owns the television rights to sell the film? And also, you've been quoted as saying that if the film did 25 to 30 million domestically, it would pay for itself down the line, which is, considering its cost, unusually low, indicating you had greater faith in international sales, and I wonder why.
No, people toss around those numbers as to how films come out, but you have to realize that a motion picture is like a skyscraper. It's a piece of real estate. If you own a piece of the profits, it's sort of like owning the apples rather than the tree. If you truly own the real estate in motion picture business, since it has life over a period of time, even though doing, say, domestic $20 or $30 million wouldn't bail the film out financially at that moment, $30 million is a lot of money for a picture to gross. $20 million is a lot of money, period. And when you consider all the many value in a motion picture over the years and in the many forms of distribution, that's a piece of collateral that you could ultimately make, a $30 million. You have to realize a $30 million film isn't an expensive film anymore. There are a lot of $30 million films that have been made in the last couple of years, and even more that are going to be made this year. Our company owns the entire movie.
In April, you passed a milestone birthday, and I'd like to know if you think of this film as a milestone in your life, and how did this film change you as an artist and as a person? And perhaps everyone could respond to that, to the last part of that question.
Well, let this be my last. Before we open this up, the film changed me in that now I'm done with, I think, easy, predictable projects, and I look forward to some really difficult stuff in the future.
Mr. Coppola.
Could we ask...
I want to ask, please.
Yeah.
Are you designing the advertising campaign for Apocalypse Now?
Like everything in Apocalypse Now, it was a colossal collaboration. Lots of people were involved.
Well, can you tell me what your concept is for promoting the film to the American public?
I don't know how to do that. I mean, it'd be campaign. I mean, the way we are presenting the film, I think, is the way we are presenting the film. I don't know that we're trying to psych them out.
No, I'm just wondering if there's anything you wanted to stress.
We're trying to stress the film as a piece of work that's something of an event. A film like this doesn't come out very often, and we would like them to think of it. That's why the film has no credits and has a program and what have you. It's give them something for their money.
Mr. Coppola, as far as the commercial success of your film is concerned, are you worried about the fact that there may be Vietnam burnout on the part of the American public?
What do you think, Bob?
Oh, there's only been 2 or 3 films on it, plus the actual war itself. I don't think so. No, I don't think it is. Burnout thing.
There's never been a movie like this, you know, and there. I would go see it.
Mr.
Can I say something? No, okay. My director.
Yeah.
Oh, like, you know, it's the best film I've ever seen on the Vietnam War, but, like, you know, besides the Gone with the Wind, I mean, what are we talking about here?
Was that on the Vietnam War?
Well, remember when they burnt down Atlanta?
Atlanta?
Yeah. I saw the film last night, you know, and I think it's one of the best films I've ever seen. Period. Then Mr. Hopper doesn't exist. Excuse me.
Do you think, Mr. Duvall, when you arrived to begin filming your part, did you have a clear-cut concept of how Colonel Kilgore was going to turn out, or was the part strengthened and improvised as the filming processed?
Well, no. Like I always like to work, and Francis had assigned various military advisors for different people in the movie for different sections of the, departmentalized different sections of the army, so to speak. And I had a guy had been a helicopter pilot in Vietnam, Dick White, and he helped inform me and helped me with my research. 1st of the 9th Air Cavalry, which was a new type of warfare that the French introduced, I think, over there, which was warfare by helicopter. I had to do a lot of research, had to improvise a lot, and I had to get him to help me design a uniform because I think they got rid of that wardrobe guy because he didn't know what he was doing. So I had a technical advisor help me with everything, and then Francis and I talked about it, and you go from there. I worked 4 or 5 times with Francis, so we get along all right.
I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Smells like victory.
Mr. Duvall, Mr. Duvall, on the to follow that up a little bit, your role more than any other in the film, it seems to me, came very close, but didn't go over into satire. Was it difficult for you to hold the line on reality there because your character was a real character?
Well, any part I try to do, I think that word style is misused. You say, well, you to learn about style acting, you got to go to England, which I think is a lot of baloney. I think that any style is personal, and I think every part you do, you got to play as if it's another section of yourself, another facet of yourself. So I find in myself which is big, and which is to the point of being satire, but it's still to me real. It has to be, I feel.
Mr. Duvall, in the production notes, you had said that you really did not see your character as either a Patton or a Custer. How is your character different from those two?
I really can't hear you.
Oh, in the production notes, you had said that you really didn't see your character as either a Patton or a Custer. How is your character different?
I said that? When did I say that? A Patton or a Custer? I don't remember saying those words. Or maybe I did. These kinds of soldiers were sanctioned in the last century the 7th Cavalry was in the last century, and these guys patterned themselves after the 7th Cavalry. They actually wore spurs, those kinds of hats, and flew in helicopters, and were very vicious soldiers, as I understand it.
Patton's son was
First of the night with the
did a
air
lot
cavalry.
of stuff that a
Yeah.
Kid would do. He used to carry a skull
Yeah.
everywhere he had.
Some of it was patterned somewhat on the book Soldier by Anthony Herbert. And also, he was very controversial and somewhat put out of the Army. I'd seen him on many talk shows. He was a very fascinating guy. And there was a guy over there, Joe Lowry, that actually served under him. So I got, certain information from those people.
Mr. Hopper. Mr. Hopper, could you compare the point of view about the Vietnam War between Tracks and Apocalypse Now?
This discotheque? I think so. It was a discotheque. Now listen, I just wondered who had the copyright rather than the patent. No, there's no comparison. Listen, I saw a movie last night that I'm very happy to say I think is one of the great.
Was it better than Easy Rider?
Yes, it was. What's the question? What's so funny? I saw a movie last night that I'm happy to say is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen, period. Now, you want to ask me another question?
No, I'd like to ask Mr.
Controversial.
Coppola a question, please. I asked someone last night why we saw so little of Brando and he was so much in the dark, and I was told that it was because he was so overweight. Do you wish to comment on that, please?
Do I wish to comment on it?
No, Mr. Coppola.
Well, I eat a lot of ice cream too, Like I'll tell you. Don't you like his voice? No, he's great in the movie. Come on, Marlon Brando's great. Come on. The movie. Don't get me started. The movie's great. It's a great movie. No, I'm sorry. And now that they've given me the microphone, I'd like to speak. It's one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. All right, but since he's the director. It is a great movie. Come on. Come on. See how much applause they got out there?
Kurtz was always a tricky character. I realized the Kurtz in Heart of Darkness, it was sliced razor thin. You build up a lot of anticipation about Kurtz. And then when you actually get there, you just see a few things. You hear a few things. He is literally a figure in the dark. And Marlon and I went through that prototype real carefully. And I remember he once said to me, he says, this guy Kurtz, he is not a man. He's something this big. And I'm something this big. So the only way we can get a handle on this guy is to just give them little aspects of him. Let Kurtz remain a mystery in his mind. In the Conrad Kurtz, you recall that they talk about how, and then he talked for hours, but Conrad never tells you what he said, which was one of the things we sat around up there scratching our heads, figuring what does in fact Kurtz say, what can live up to the anticipation. And the theatrical use of light and dark and just a little bit of Brando was trying artfully to find just enough to give of him without making it overstated and just, to keep the mystery. Thank you.
Mr. Coppola, in line with that, much has been said about Marlon Brando's improvisation on that set. Did he improvise the Gardenia speech?
The way we worked was that Marlon and I would talk about the material, and we would tape record it, and then I would take it back and I would type from the tape recordings of what we had talked about in his hotel room or what have you, and through a process of elimination, the interesting ideas would stay in, and so that the Gardenia imagery did come from Marlon, though it was not improvised at that second. It was something we talked about earlier.
There's a place in the river, I can't remember. Must have been a gardenia plantation or flower plantation at one time. It's all wild and overgrown now, but for about about 5 miles, you'd think that heaven just fell on the earth in the form of gardenias.
Mr. Hall, first of all, have you read the story on which the film is based, Heart of Darkness?
No, I haven't.
Because in the novella, sort of, I guess what would be the equivalent of the character you play dies fairly much in the way that you die. And as I recall, during the Vietnam War, there was a great deal of talk about the inordinate percentages of blacks who were getting killed. And I was wondering, were you thinking about that while you did the role? The fact that, they were much like the character was treated as the noble savage who could be depended on in Conrad's book. The black soldier during Vietnam was sort of always getting the shit assignments.
No, I was not.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Coppola, I was 2 questions. Can you explain your distribution strategy on this, like when we'll get to small towns? And will all your showings have no credits and have programs even out beyond New York?
No, in the sound good in the theater? I haven't heard. The 70 millimeter performance we tried to make as much like a concert performance as possible with the good sound, and I as a moviegoer always felt, why do I have to have a commercial put up? Why do I have to have words printed up? Why can't I just see the work and then read in my leisure? That's why we did it. In the 35 Dolby, which will not be quad like you heard it, but will be stereo, there will be credits on it, and the credits will be on the end, and they're real beautiful. The 35s have a different ending because they have the explosions that people kept asking me about.
Mr. Coppola?
See it when it comes to you. It's real nice.
Mr. Coppola, since you didn't actually fight in Vietnam yourself, on what basis did you arrive at getting a texture for the battle sequences? Specifically, I'm talking about the helicopter sequence.
Same way Bobby was talking, and the same way we did it on The Godfather or anything, is that there's a phase when you're making a big picture where you go very heavily into research, and that comprises looking at film, hearing, becoming associated with people who did have first-hand experience, and really studying the pictures, and that's what I do on any picture.
Francis, was that a facetious remark? Is the 35 going to have the blowing up of the sanctuary, or are you kidding?
The title sequence on the 35 version, since they cannot go out without titles, is made out of some infrared footage that we shot. Really beautiful stuff, and it's very appropriate as if the film had to have a title sequence. That's the way it should be.
Where is that set?
It's at the end, but it doesn't alter. In other words, it doesn't make a story point.
Infrared footage of what?
See it,
Mr. Cobb.
You want to know what that version is going to be like?
Can't we find out since we didn't see it? That's what the whole country's going to see. Yeah.
Well, I assume that, okay. It's just a title sequence made up of explosions. It's just as the film opens with explosions as a metaphoric kind of imagery. We made a title sequence out of napalm and this kind of imagery.
Mr. Coppola, during the last minute work on this film, I understand you were also helping out on Hide in Plain Sight, James Caan's movie. There's one story that you were unable to help it. What stage is that movie in, and were you able to help the editing on that, and why is that taking so much time to come out?
Where do these things come from? Hide in Plain Sight is a really nice little film, a really good, I shouldn't say little, a really interesting, serious film, and I was able to help out.
Apocalypse Now is considered a movie masterpiece and one of the greatest films ever made. If you've never seen it, it's available for streaming from several platforms, but there's also an excellent documentary, Hearts of Darkness, A Filmmaker's Apocalypse, which takes you right into the set during all of the turmoil. Francis' first feature film, Dementia 13, was made back in 1963. He's now 85 and still making movies.